The Mariners don't want to do anything, so it's Fan Fiction Friday again. We'll dive into your trades coming up. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, December 27th, 2024. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Fan Fiction Friday, the show where we grade your Mariners trade ideas on the 20/80 scale based on creativity, uniqueness, and viability. But before we get into your trades, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. Hey, the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And hey, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. All right, so kicking us off here on Fan Fiction Friday is one of my favorite usernames that we have in our community, HamSwaggerty69, as a deal with the San Francisco Giants. The Mariners get LaMonte Wade Jr. and Tom Murphy for Mitch Garver, Troy Taylor, Jeter Martinez, and adds the Mariners save about $4.2 million in this move. I'm going to trust you on that because I'm too lazy to open up Spot Track. Figure it all out myself. So, Colby, what do you think?
My initial reaction is like, why would the Giants want to do this? Now, Murphy was a disappointment last year, sure. Not as much as Garver. Both guys have, injury concerns in their past. But Garver's making $12 million next year. And I believe Murphy's going to make $4 million. If I'm not mistaken. So that's a pretty big gap. And then you have to throw in LaMonte Wade Jr. because, the Mariners swapping, like Garver for Murphy makes no sense for really either side. So now you have to throw in LaMonte Wade Jr., Jeter Martinez. The shine's really fallen off of him a little bit. Like he's not as hyped as he used to be. But the Troy Taylor thing is interesting because essentially what you're asking is, hey, do you guys want to buy Troy Taylor for like $4 million, more or less? Because Murphy to Garver, probably a wash in terms of what you can expect from them in 2025. So whatever. And then you're taking LaMonte Wade and he's making $4 million. So yeah, in a way, this is kind of like Wade for Troy Taylor. Sure. And that makes it pretty interesting. So I don't think it would happen. I don't think there's enough in it for the Giants, but Wade is a rental and he is kind of running out of space in San Francisco. He's being pushed out of that lineup. So they're
looking at first base options.
Right. So they might just be the team that, is like, look, I mean, we want to get something for him, not nothing. And Taylor is a potential high leverage arm. But at that point, if you're the Mariners, do you look at this and be like, okay, do we want to save $4 million to get a less athletic Luke Raley? Because Wade shouldn't really face lefties. He really should only play first base. Like he doesn't even have the ability. Well, he doesn't play the outfield as well as Raley. So it's kind of a weird fit there. So I think you kind of stack all these on top of each other. It's just a really weird kind of like fit, but it's super interesting. Like I'll give you that. It is definitely something that is unique and, not an idea that we've talked a lot about. And it is, Jerry circles back and Tom has always been one of his guys. So
sure,
maybe, maybe, but I just think there's like enough pieces that are just a little bit off in this entire trade that it's like, no, but I see what you're going for.
Yeah. I'm not mad at this. I think this deal would be easier to wrap my head around if the Mariners just kicked in the extra $4 million.
Right. But at that point, are you trading Troy Taylor?
No.
For 1 year?
No. So I don't know. It kind of like, in a way, you acknowledge the flaws or what appears to be flaws of the deal, but then you think about, like what you just said, and then it kind of balances itself out. So Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give this a 55.
Ooh, okay.
I don't think
Spicy.
I don't think it's necessarily a 60 because again, there might be some roadblocks you run into here.
Yeah, I don't think it's
But
realistic enough to be a 60.
yeah, but every time I kind of like going through my head right now, like just processing the trade, like every time I'm like, I don't know if that works, but actually it kind of does because of this. And then, but that part doesn't really work, but actually it does kind of because of this, right? So I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting. This is creative.
Yeah. If we were good podcasters, we would grade everything with like a famous GIF. And this would be that like, no, well, maybe lady, like,
Yeah.
no. Well,
Well,
like we would insert
yeah,
that here.
yeah,
So for that reason, I'm going to give it like it's a 50. Like it's good. It's good. It's a good way to start, I would say.
yeah. Off to a
Yeah.
good start.
Mhm.
Our buddy Isaac Levin has a deal with the Giants as well. This one is a lot more ambitious. Luis Castillo and Mitch Haniger for LaMonte Wade, Tyler Fitzgerald. Wait for it, folks. Especially if you're only listening on the audio only version of this. Robbie Ray.
They're getting Tyler Fitzgerald for their troubles.
Mhm.
For downgrading from Castillo to Ray, they're getting Fitzgerald and Wade, but also dumping the salary of Haniger. Feels a bit ambitious to me.
Yeah.
Because Wade
Mariners are getting the Mariners are accomplishing a lot here.
right on saving $13 million on top of it as well, by the way, 12 to 13 million bucks. So and they're getting a DH / first baseman, they're getting an infielder. And I mean, I would say they're downgrading in the rotation, but if Robbie is healthy, he's more than an adequate replacement for Castillo. So yeah, it's very ambitious. It's very funny. I don't think this is real world stuff at all.
Yeah.
But again, it is hilarious because the idea that the Mariners would trade Luis Castillo and like the pitcher they bring to replace him is just Robbie Ray. And obviously Mitch Haniger and Robbie Ray were already traded for each other once. Like it's very funny.
Yeah.
And it is creative. I'll give you that, Isaac. But it's going to lose a lot of points for like real world. Like
It's a 45 at best. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Isaac, but
I think because of the like the irony of it and all that,
yeah.
I'd give it a 45. Like I'll max it out there, but it's just so
Yeah.
unrealistic that it can't be a 50.
Yeah, if it wasn't as funny, it would be like a 35.
It's the irony is not lost on me, and
Yeah.
it makes like just enough sense that you're like,
I don't see why the Giants would do this, especially with how it seems the league is valuing Luis Castillo right now. It just doesn't feel very reflective of that.
right. And so yeah, I mean like, I don't know. Could you do Castillo for like Wade and Robbie Ray? Yeah, probably. Would the Mariners do that? No.
No.
No. So yeah, the Haniger
Well, I
thing,
just don't really know how they value Tyler Fitzgerald because, like, on one hand, he's coming off of a 3-win season. He could play multiple positions, but he also did that in limited time, which, like, on one hand, can be really impressive. On the other, it's like, well, that's kind of a small sample size, and he's 27 years old.
Yeah.
So is he a late bloomer? Did he just kind of have this outlier year? Like, who is Tyler Fitzgerald?
Yeah, there's just too many questions surrounding him to be the headliner of any kind of trade with San Francisco, especially for Castillo. So, yeah, again, I appreciate the attempt and the irony of it, but it's not based in reality. I don't think. Who knows? Maybe we're wrong.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened, but yeah, I'll give it the max grade I possibly could, which is a 45.
Yeah, it's just like they're getting Wade, they're getting Fitzgerald, they're addressing the open spot on the rotation, all in the same trade, and they're getting money back too on top of it.
And opening up a roster spot that Mitch Haniger has no business owning.
Yeah, it's too good to be true.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not sure if it's even good enough to do, though. So like, yeah, there's just a lot of things that just,
Colby
like,
has high standards for a Luis Castillo trade. Clearly,
I do because Fitzgerald is nothing to me. He's Jose
Wow.
Caballero. Like,
Wow.
okay,
I mean, he's better than that.
might be. He might be worse. We don't know. So, yeah, no.
All right. All right. Well, we are going to grade more of your trades here in just a moment. But first, a reminder this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fan Fiction Friday. We are grading your Mariners trade ideas. Adam has a deal here with White Sox, Luis Robert Jr. and Andrew Vaughn to the Mariners for LaMonte and Tyler Locklear. Feels close. Feels pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, like you're trading a theoretically good hitter for a theoretically good prospect in a first base swap, and you're basically letting the Sox reset their timeline at first base.
Yeah.
So that part's fine. Now the salary, Vaughn is ARB1, so he's actually going to be making some money. Then we know Robert is too, and the Mariners aren't, this probably blows their entire budget, so they'll have to make a move somewhere else. But just, grading the standalone trade. And then you go to the Luis Robert for LaMonte part, and it's like, we've heard the White Sox specifically say they're looking for not necessarily a package, but they want like I don't remember the exact terminology, but it's basically like they want one impactful piece rather than like a kind of a bulk deal of prospects. So do they consider Montez an impactful piece? I mean, certainly not to their 2025 or 2026 teams. They're not going to win those years anyways, but we have seen the White Sox kind of favor guys who are major league ready or major league adjacent. Montez is not that, but Locklear is. So is there kind of this, I don't know what you want to call it. Like, is there this kind of like this excess value from Locklear that kind of bumps up, Montez's value to the White Sox?
Yeah,
maybe. So yeah, it feels about right. I don't know. Maybe they want Harry Ford instead. Maybe they want Cole Young instead. A little less upside there, but closer to the big leagues. But yeah, because I think Locklear for Vaughn is an overpay from the Mariners side of things. So is there some excess value from that kind of pushes Montez up to be worth Robert? Possibly. It feels like it's in the ballpark to me.
I would say that this is probably spot on, given the things that we've heard about Robert, the things that have been reported, I should say, because that makes it sound like we've like personally heard these things. But given the things that have been reported about Robert and his value right now, I feel like this is pretty much in the ballpark.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm hung up on here, and it's kind of a minor thing, I just don't think the Mariners would pay $6.4 million for Andrew Vaughn, which is what he's projected by MLB trade rumors.
Is he ARB2 or ARB1?
That sounds like an ARB2 number to me.
Because Vaughn has not been, what's the word? Good in his major league career. So, yeah. So I don't know if Vaughn actually helps, because if you're the Mariners.
Yeah, he's ARB2.
Yeah, if you're the Mariners and you look at Vaughn, you're like, I mean, isn't there a pretty good chance we just get that from Locklear this year? Like, Vaughn is like, what, a career 100 WRC plus guy? He's never been worth a full win in a season, despite having a couple full years under his belt. Like, yeah, that might kill the deal right there. But, in essence, then at that point, it's Montez and Locklear for Vaughn. So I don't know. Do the White Sox have to take some money? Do they have to send some money the Mariners' way to make this trade work? Probably. But either way, I would say this is probably like in the ballpark for what Robert would cost. And again, like Ty said, I haven't heard anything about Robert and the Mariners since the summer. One of the things I did hear this summer, I think we both heard this, was that the White Sox sat on Locklear for a couple of weeks in Tacoma.
They did a lot of groundwork throughout the Mariners organization this summer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, Locklear was one of the guys that I personally heard they were scouting, along with Emerson Hancock, funny enough.
Right.
So,
oh my God, if they could trade Emerson Hancock for anything.
Maybe you'll get your wish, Colby.
Praise be.
Poor Emerson Hancock.
Yeah. But,
I always hear like he's like the nicest guy in the organization, and you just...
Yeah. And that Marine layer, which I am apparently a part of, by the way. That's the propaganda that they're sharing over there. They're like, oh,
TJ and Lyle are apparently stealing you, and they can have you.
Cool. Yeah, he's so nice. It's like, cool, he should get a nice fastball, then I'll care. So, yeah.
The longer the Mariners don't make trades, the podcast should start making trades with one another. Like, I should trade you for, like... TJ for like a couple of weeks of TJ and like a second round pick or something.
First of all, I am worth way more than TJ.
Not to me.
Oh, that's what you think.
And as we know, I am the GM of Locked On Mariners and the president of podcast operations, the Popo.
No. So yeah. Overall, I'd give this trade like 50 because I feel like it's like in the ballpark, and there's still some minor details you have to hammer out on both sides, but yeah, it feels about right.
All right, so we are going to grade more of your trades here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Gametime. And that was the case well before Gametime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Gametime Picks. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Gametime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fan Fiction Friday. We got a couple more of your trades to go over here. This one comes from Quinn. Quinn has a deal with the Orioles. Ryan O'Hearn for Ben Williamson, Dwell Joseph, and Brock Roden. That feels fine. If the Orioles want prospects, that is.
Sure. Although I don't know what Williamson is going to give the Orioles that they don't already have in spades. And he's kind of the headliner in this deal. So O'Hearn, you get him for 1 year. He's on a regular contract. You get him for 1 year. You're really buying the bat here. There's not really any glove, so to speak. He's bad at first base. So
yeah. And he's a strong side platoon.
Right. So it's like, would you trade all that for another Luke Raley without the athleticism?
Well, do you want Luke Raley to be playing in the outfield and DHing primarily? If the answer is yes, then O'Hearn makes sense.
No, if I'm acquiring O'Hearn, I want him to be the DH. And then again, I'm doing another platoon at first base and DH because, again, O'Hearn is a strong side platoon player.
Yeah.
So O'Hearn's not a name we've mentioned. The advanced metrics, which I don't like calling whiff percentage an advanced metric, but whatever.
Sure.
They were pretty good last year. The year before, they were pretty average. They were okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think O'Hearn's a nice target. I think he needs to come pretty cheap because it's only a year, and again, he is a flawed player. And so I do think the price is relatively cheap though for a guy like O'Hearn here.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
I would have no issue with them doing this.
No, to me, I look at it and I say, okay, what's the incentive for Baltimore to do this? There really isn't one. So,
I mean, if they want to move on from O'Hearn, get some assets back, sure. Right. But that's really it. That's the only angle here.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, I don't know, 45, like 50. Like,
yeah, I'm feeling a 45. But I'm not really moved by it. Yeah.
No, like I'm not jacked if they make this trade, but I don't hate it if they make it. Valuation feels about right. Although, again, I'm not 100% sure Baltimore has any interest in Williamson as the prize, but still feels about right.
I mean, he could be their Ramon Arias replacement.
Maybe.
All right. Last trade of the day comes from Daisy and the Dingo. Their deal consists of Carlos Correa and David Festa going to Seattle from Minnesota for Luis Castillo, Victor Robles, Harry Ford.
Yeah, in terms of realism, this is a 0. In terms of like creativity, like it's like a 60, 65.
Sure.
So like, yeah, I don't think the Twins are going to trade Festa. They really like him. And they probably plan on sticking him in the rotation if they're able to move Pablo Lopez, which they've apparently been shopping. Again, the Twins are a team that will not spend money. Like they've hit their max. And last year, in fact, the only move they made last winter was to trade Jorge Polanco. So they didn't do anything this winter or this summer, despite being in the playoff hunt and actually holding a playoff.
They did
spot.
Sign Carlos Santana last offseason.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And they had to trade Jorge Polanco to be able to afford that. So, yeah, it's and then again this summer, despite holding pretty firmly a playoff spot at the time, all they did was acquire Trevor Richards because they couldn't afford to do anything else. They couldn't afford to take on salary, and thus far, everything we've heard from this year is that the Twins are much more likely to try and shed salary this winter than they are to add it. And like the Mariners, they are a team who have done nothing of significance. Yeah. So the Twins are definitely looking to shed payroll. And because of that, you probably get a better deal than this. Because Correa, while he's still pretty good, hurt a lot, making $37 million a year.
He's not waiving his no trade clause for you though.
No, I highly doubt it. And honestly, there's a pretty decent chance Castillo doesn't waive his no trade clause for Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like, why go from Seattle to Minnesota when Minnesota is even like in a worse position than you are in Seattle in terms of like financial restrictions and all that. And you get to pitch in Seattle, which is a better place to pitch than Minnesota. Yeah. So it just seems like there's too many roadblocks here. There's too many speed bumps. Also, I don't like the idea of the Mariners having to try and replace Victor Robles on top of adding like the $15 million or whatever they still owe Correa for this year. So yeah, 40. It's out there.
Sure.
But it is certainly not players we've talked about a whole. We've talked about Castillo. We talked about, but we haven't talked about trading Victor Robles. We haven't talked about acquiring like a young, unproven major league starter to replace Castillo. But I honestly, I think both teams look at this deal and they just say no. So if both sides are going to say no to your trade, it's probably at best like a 40.
Yeah. It's fun, but that's about it. That's about all it has going for it. So 40. So that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Peace.